everyone! Welcome to the Cave Boys once again, and today we have a very, very special guest.
We here at the Cave Boys, we like to occasionally do a bit of charity, don't we, boys? We reach out to some of the smaller, up-and-coming Zelda channels and we say, hey, do you want to come and talk about Zelda? And today is no exception. To insert myself into someone's bottom very quickly, Zeltik is responsible for essentially pioneering an entire genre here on YouTube. You've been doing it for the best part of a decade at this point, and have inspired countless gamers and creators alike to indulge in the world that brings us all together, and that is The Legend of Zelda. So yes, thank you very much for taking the time to join us here today, mate.
No, likewise, yeah, thank you for having me on. Honestly, massive pleasure. Not to interrupt really quick, I just wanted to ask one thing, because I've watched a decent amount of your content. I wanted to know where the Cave Boys name comes from. Is that just like created in the kingdom, everyone's excited about caves?
Yeah, no, exactly that. Yeah, no, it doesn't go any deeper than that.
That is literally where it comes from.
It's about as stupid as it sounds, yeah.
I'm glad to hear it, there you go.
We are all sub 30 IQ.
We are basically Neanderthals, so it just worked.
Going back to the very start of your channel, I think Johnny has a few questions that he'd love to ask.
Yeah, because like many people, you were my introduction to the world of Zelda content on YouTube. I remember back, this was like 2014, 2015, I think.
Yeah.
When I got started.
2015.
2015. Like that, so that was, like say, almost a decade. Well, it is a decade ago.
Don't say that.
And you don't look a day over 16 still. So he was about 3 when he started.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, there was something really interesting, right? I couldn't help but notice that your channel germinated during what is probably one of the lowest points in Nintendo's history, at least in recent years, and that being the Wii U period.
Yeah.
Actually, the year your channel started, 2015, that was dubbed by Scott the Woz as the Dark Age of Nintendo. Not because you started your channel, because of the Wii U. You know, obviously we've gone from the meteoric success of the Wii to an equally awe-inspiring downturn with its sequential console, the Wii U. And then when all seemed lost, at a point when the market was at a point where most investors were jumping ship, if not jumping from the nearest tall building, Zeltik came along and said, you know what, I'm all in. Nintendo, Wii U, Zelda, full steam ahead. So, Mr. Zeltik, my question to you is, what was it? Was it passion that made you stick through the dark times? Was it naivety, maybe? Or was it the complete opposite? Did you see something coming that other people didn't?
I don't know, it was kind of a mix of all of them and kind of like just blind optimism a lot of the time. 'Cause before then, really before the Switch, you will probably know this as well, like if you kind of said you were a Nintendo fan back, like when I was at secondary school, so like, 2008 to 2015, whatever, if you said you're a Nintendo fan, I'm playing my Wii U, but on the weekend or something, there's this, Mario 3D World's just come out. Everyone would like look at you like, what are you on about? We're playing Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah, what about FIFA?
You're not playing COD?
You're not playing Ultimate 2?
Yeah, exactly, yeah, but I don't know, I'm just quite stubborn, I think. So I've been a Zelda fan my whole life, and the more people were like, Nintendo's weird, it's not the thing at the moment, I kind of doubled down on that. I was like, it is the thing. Like, it is so cool. Then when Zelda Wii U at the time, Breath of the Wild, was like on the horizon, I think I kind of attached to that as this beacon of what Zelda could be, and like in my mind, the place it should be in the gaming world. And obviously I wasn't the first person on YouTube to start talking about this game and like, hyping it up, coming up with theories of what it could be. There was a load of channels, there was Vortexy Gaming, Commonwealth Realm, McIntyre Productions, HMK, people like that who I watched as my little, like my hopium dealers,
Oh, yeah.
And then I was like, at one time I was like, I've got all these hopes and expectations of this game. I'm just gonna, hold my phone out in front of my face and talk into it and upload that and see where we go. So I think the reason I got in, during 2015, like you say, it was the dark ages. Was just because, because it was so dark and because I was so stubborn, I kind of attached myself to the future of Zelda, like more than I think I had at any other period in my life. Because obviously I've always followed where the series is going.
Yeah.
But I think at that time it was like, it really needs something to bring it back to life. And we'd had the 2014 E3, the reveal trailer for Breath of the Wild, and the Game Awards little, 10-minute gameplay clip as well. So we'd seen, a decent amount of this game. We knew it kind of the style of game they were going for, and I don't know, it did just feel different. Like this, it did feel like the one.
You actually brought up a really interesting point there, and that was like back at the time when you started your channel, everyone was asking like, you're not playing Call of Duty, you're not playing FIFA. And what those games had in common was multiplayer online lobbies. They incentivized you to play not only with your friends, but with people from all across the world. So that would have definitely helped to push those kinds of games into the mainstream. And I think that's why single-player games like Zelda took a bit of a back seat during those years. And that's where you and your channel came in. Essentially, your role was to fill the same role as those lobbies, where those lobbies brought everyone that like COD together. Obviously, Zelda is a single-player, for the most part, is a single-player experience. So they needed someone like you and other creators like you mentioned to come along and fill the hole where those lobbies were for other people. I don't know about you, Zeltik, but for the longest time, obviously I've enjoyed Zelda since I was, like 2, 3, 4 years old. And for the longest time, I wasn't even aware that other people liked it.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was people like you that helped bring that to my attention. Like, oh, actually, other people do play this game.
Yeah, exactly. You'd meet like someone very occasionally, at a party, or you knew another guy at school that was into Zelda or whatever. And you got this feeling that other people were, but yeah, you're right, they kind of weren't connected in the same way that the Xbox or PlayStation game fans were. And like the Zelda community obviously existed way before 2015 in like the Zelda universe forums. The Reddit existed before then, obviously, but it wasn't as, I don't know, personal might be the wrong word, but like there weren't voices attached to it, and you couldn't just kind of have your headphones on and listen to people talk about it as much as you could later on, especially post Breath of the Wild, obviously, where the Zelda fan base kind of exploded.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but what might surprise some people to learn is that the first technical theory video on your channel wasn't actually a Zelda theory. I think it was... I might be wrong in saying this, like say, I'd be open to correction. I think it was a Star Fox timeline theory.
Oh no, you've gone back in the archives.
At this point, you had made Zelda videos, like postulating about various features of the game, particularly pertaining to the Wii U era, but I think the first theory might have been a Star Fox theory. Yeah,
the first kind of theory is in, looking at the story particularly. Well, like you said, thanks Johnny, almost a decade. But
sorry, mate.
Yeah, I think Star Fox Zero was revealed at that E3. I remember hyping myself up for it, and I think they might have said that Zelda's not going to be present during that E3. I might be getting my years mixed up. Yeah. There was one year, it might have been E3 2015, where they said like, don't get your hopes up, Zelda Wii U is not going to be shown here. And obviously that, crushed me. But it kind of worked out well, because it coincided with, I had my A-levels then. So I was like, I'm not going to look at Nintendo's E3, I'm going to focus on my chemistry, grind that out, and then afterwards, a couple days later, I'll watch all their content. And then I remember sitting in my room reading, the textbook, trying to, it didn't go well. I didn't get a good grade in the end, but tried to learn some chemistry. It's tough. But then I remember my little brother walking past my room, and I was really annoyed at him because I heard him speaking to I've got 3 brothers, speaking to one of my other brothers, saying, "Oh, Nintendo have just showed Zelda," and I was like, oh my god, it was like a ruse. They've tricked us all. They've actually showed Zelda Wii U. And so, revising was so impossible then without looking at what Nintendo had done. But then I finally did it. I got through, did the chemistry exam, got an E or whatever, came home. Turns out the Zelda game that they'd talked about, that he was on about, was Triforce Heroes.
Oh no.
So it's like, not only had I had the worst exam of my life, I'd come home thinking I'm going to see Zelda Wii U. And it was Triforce Heroes. But yeah, I think that was when they showed off Star Fox. I wonder if there was an element of me kind of pivoting into something that I could attach to because of the lack of Zelda at the time. I don't know, because I've always been a Star Fox fan as well.
If I could once again remind Zeltik that the flow of time is indeed always cruel.
Yes.
So 10 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago to the date, you dropped that first technical theory. And since then, how have you refined the process of crafting a theory, from coming up with the idea to scripting it to then posting it and presenting it to the people online? Has that process changed at all?
I think a little bit, yeah, because like the original, the initial beginning of making a theory is still the same. It's like I'll either be playing a Zelda game, I'll be talking to people like yourselves about Zelda, or reading the forums, reading Reddit or whatever, and I'll get see something interesting that perhaps I haven't thought about in detail before. Usually a mystery, because how Zelda games are built. There's just mysteries with no answers throughout every single one.
Yeah.
Find a mystery. There's a few of those, and if you get a little idea of where you can take that, not always where the developers might have wanted you to go. It's not like they write the mysteries with a definitive answer the whole time. It's more like if there's a mystery and you can think of an answer that would make sense given the puzzle pieces they've provided you with, if you get what I mean. I'd make the video, then come up with the title and, you know, the thumbnail as it was rendering or whatever. But now it's more of a case where I'll kind of get an initial idea on the kind of sort of video I want to be making. Then I'll create the thumbnail and the title and then kind of work backwards. I suppose it says, you know, bad things about the state of YouTube now, and like what you kind of have to do to stand out is less about what it used to be, where you could just kind of make something from your soul, you know, and pour it out and it would do well. It's more you kind of have to actually calculate what you think will do well, especially, you know, when you're paying your mortgage based on AdSense is not fun a lot of the time. So yeah, I'll kind of come up with the initial idea, but then imagine what that idea would be like if it was recommended to me on YouTube, and then kind of create that video that doesn't exist yet. So a lot of it is kind of working backwards rather than forwards now, which, you know, has changed, yeah.
Now, the last question I have for you, just before I let the other cave boys probe you. I was
going to say, stop talking to Johnny, honestly.
One thing because obviously, like I say, I've been a viewer of yours for many years at this point. The one thing I've noticed is you've clearly come from some sort of creative background. I don't know whether you're into like photography or art, but you clearly come from some sort of, you know, because I remember there was a video when you did, you were generating ideas for Breath of the Wild and literally painted the pictures yourself. You clearly do your own thumbnails. You know, you're clearly quite adept when it comes to the ideas of like composition and color. Where does that come from? Am I right in saying you come from some sort of creativity?
Yeah, so like I've always been, you know, an artist or whatever, and I've before I started doing YouTube, that's what I wanted to do. You know, it's like I wanted to maybe not traditional art, but I wanted to go into, I don't know, web design or logo design or something like that. That's what I did at uni. I did digital art. But yeah, like my whole life has been, you know, I'll draw pictures or whatever. Less so these days. I don't do as much as I want to do. But yeah, I've always been an artist. I did a lot of literature at school as well, through to like A-level as well. So like creative writing has been another passion of mine, which I find like obviously Zelda is what I do on YouTube, but a lot of the time I try and just, if I get an idea for something creative, I'll try and like focus it through Zelda, because, you know, then it keeps my lights on if I do that. For example, recently I did a video on the Anju and Cafe quest in Majora's Mask, and that was like kind of a creative writing exercise in that it's like, you know, take all the pieces, take all the events that happen throughout Majora's Mask, and then write it as if it was a story and like show all the different events that happen and stuff. See, I suppose it's a mix of, yeah, always liking creative writing, always liking art, and then finding something that you can do both. Like YouTube just allows you to do whatever you want with that.
Interesting, yeah. Well, and both of those things, you know, whether it's creative writing or art itself, both of those things lend themselves to theory crafting, because that is essentially what it is. It's an exercise in creativity and your knowledge of the given subject.
As we've already touched on, you've been on YouTube for about a decade. I'm just going to throw Johnny under the bus for bringing this up. Yeah, we'll just keep bringing it up throughout the interview. But
oh yeah,
not to make it worse, but I want to ask a question that takes us back even further, actually, to sort of childhood times. And the question is, what are your earliest memories of playing Zelda, or maybe even watching Zelda if it was a parent or a friend? Just what are your earliest memories that you can think back to of playing Zelda?
Yeah, well, for me it was Ocarina of Time, was like the first Zelda game. Like when I was basically newborn, you know, like a tiny little baby. My parents, they had a Nintendo 64. I can't remember if my dad, you know, bought it off a friend or whatever, but they had, because they're not super into games, but they had a Nintendo 64, and they got really, really into Mario 64 when I was really young, and I think that they kind of leave me in the cot or whatever, in the corner of the room while they played Mario 64 for like a couple hours. I think that's kind of seeped into my subconscious, because like Mario 64 music in particular is just like so like, I don't know, ingrained in my head now. And then that kind of led into Ocarina of Time, because they didn't play that as much. But I remember that kind of always being the fantasy game that was on the game console in the playroom sort of thing. It's like, when I was like 2 or whatever, I could go and play that game. I never got far. When I was a really little kid, I played a little bit. I got up to Dodongo's Cavern in Ocarina of Time, and it terrified me. I quit. It took me like 10 years to go back and beat that game, because I couldn't do it as a kid. It was too scary. Then it was Ocarina of Time that really kind of, you know, first taught little me what Zelda was. But then it was the Wind Waker that I really fell in love with. I remember me and my brothers, we kind of saved up for a GameCube that we shared, and Wind Waker was one of the games we got with it. I don't know whether it's Wind Waker's easier or if I was just at the right age, but I could actually, play through that, and that was the first Zelda game I properly beat. And then kind of ever since, it's like I've just followed where the series goes.
Lifelong obsession.
Are you sure you don't have 4 brothers? I feel like I might have been separated at birth here. It sounds like we had an identical upbringing.
Just be glad you're not from Stoke. Anyway,
Thank you, Ed.
on the general topic of personal life still, have you introduced any personal friends to the Zelda series, especially since you've started up the YouTube channel?
I'd say a couple, but I don't know if I could really take credit for it, because a lot of my friends have played, who had never played Zelda games, have played Breath of the Wild at least. Less of them Tears of the Kingdom, interestingly. But because I think it's just the way that everyone has a Switch now, and they know that I make Zelda videos, and Breath of the Wild is such a massive thing. A lot of them have ended up playing that, and I couldn't say that, like, I've got them into it or whatever, but I think because they're more aware of it perhaps because of being friends with me than they would be otherwise. They've played that. I don't know, I couldn't take credit for getting too many people into it, I don't think.
You could take credit for most people online, but we'll just keep that one out.
Maybe.
Speaking of friends, family, what do your family and friends think of, like, the whole doing the YouTube thing?
Well, I think kind of because I've done it so long, thanks Johnny, they're kind of, it's not really a big thing that we talk about anymore. It's, I've had periods of time where the channel grew faster than other periods, but it wasn't kind of like going viral overnight sort of thing. It was like more of a gradual thing. I've just made Zelda videos for years, and slowly it's kind of gone. And it was a more gradual transition as well, that I was doing it throughout university and then kind of just decided to continue that instead of applying for jobs when I finished that. So it's like there was never like a moment where it's like, whoa, like Ed's a YouTuber now. It was like, oh yeah, Ed's still making those Zelda videos. Before Zelda stuff, there was like, I made RuneScape content back in the day. That was my big thing in like 2008, which, didn't go anywhere, of course. Then there was, I don't know if any of you guys know the LA Beast at all.
Yeah, I remember LA Beast.
Yeah, oh yeah. I remember.
You can see my webcam. You see this above me is
oh yeah.
This was like the luckiest I've ever got in my life. So this will make sense. I'll come back around to it. But the LA Beast recently, or like a year or two ago, did a video where he made this by like focusing the sun through like magnifying glasses to burn a little caricature of himself on some wood, and then he put like one of those what's the giveaway thing, Gleam links in his description. Like to win the sun painting he made. So I was like, sure, I'll click on that. Somehow won it, which is crazy. So I've got the LA Beast thing. But the reason I bring him up is like he was one of the biggest early inspirations for me on YouTube. They're still up on YouTube. I'm not going to tell you the channel name, but they are still up. There's I used to do like not competitive eating, but it was more like let's eat 2 ghost chilies and just film our reaction or whatever, like proper like LA Beast inspired stuff.
If you'd have asked me what is Zeltik's biggest influence on YouTube, I would have never ever guessed LA Beast.
That's really fascinating.
Okay, smash cut now to a clip of what that guy does, by the way, for those who don't know.
Now what we have here is 1 gallon of the habanero flavored Tabasco sauce. I'm going to drink the entire gallon.
Okay, what you just saw, that is Zeltik's biggest YouTube influence.
Now he's the man. I love that guy.
That is a hell of a revelation. I love that.
So that's kind of where I got my like first had to teach myself how to edit YouTube videos, and like first learned Sony Vegas was doing that sort of stuff.
I mean, you kind of touched on it there, where there's not that many videos that you'd say like really push the channel. It was more so just getting there. But do you remember if there was like one of the first videos that just like it got a few more views than you expected, and it's like, well, that's too many? Yeah,
like really early on, I owe a lot of like the early traction I got to like collaborations with other YouTubers at the time. So like I said, McIntyre Productions, Commonwealth Realm, channels like that.
Yeah.
Making collaboration content with them. that kind of gave me that's what gave me a jump start. If you were talking videos that were like really influential into like, you know, starting to gain a bit of momentum, it would be doing those really early videos.
Yeah, doing the collaborations.
Yeah, with McIntyre, Commonwealth Realm. In particular, they're like two really big channels at the time. They were like the big dogs in Zelda YouTube, and working with them was huge. Then, after that, it was kind of snowballing with Breath of the Wild's proper unveiling. You know, E3 2016, where like it was mainly just the Great Plateau they showed. There was like, you know, the demo on the show floor. So there was loads of stuff to analyze because the mysteries were still like, you know, really alive. And just, making content on that was the first time it was kind of like, whoa, like that's a lot of views coming out of nowhere.
Because especially, the giant bump with Breath of the Wild, right? Like going from the game before, apart from the HD versions and any 2D games, is like Skyward Sword that still didn't sell that great compared to Twilight Princess, as an example.
Yeah.
And then going straight to Breath of the Wild that sold so incredibly well, it's insane. Mm-hmm. It is a big jump up, and especially for content, a lot of people just wanted to see more. And actually, that does lead me into just general theorizing on Breath of the Wild. I mean, we kind of know where you got your ideas from. What made you want to run into the whole lore, theory, timeline, all that sort of stuff?
So like I said, kind of when I was talking about art and creative writing or whatever, I've always been really into lore in general and like, you know, fantasy media, like, you know, Lord of the Rings and books called The King Killer Chronicle, if anyone's read them. There's only two. He never finished the third one. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
Many such cases in fantasy, unfortunately.
Yes, there are, unfortunately. I've always loved just fantasy lore in general, and because I'd had this little platform making my Zelda content through like speculating on Breath of the Wild. When the game came out and it had so many mysteries, it was like, well, let's theorize about them then. They clearly want us to ask these questions. Let's make some content about it. Zelda lore's always been kind of, I suppose it really starts with the Wind Waker, where it begins with the legend of this ancient hero and forgotten kingdom, which is so exciting. And then the more of the game you play, the more those mysteries are answered. You visit this ancient lost kingdom and you become the successor to this legendary hero. I think in my early kid brain, that carved out a special place for Zelda as this like, it was still a Nintendo game, it was like Mario and Smash and Star Fox, but like this was their one with the story, this was their mystery series. Even if I wasn't making YouTube videos about it, I'd be, thinking about these things regardless.
On that point, actually, just theories in general, do you have like a favorite theory that you've created? Or maybe not even created, but like even if you've just like popularized it with a video?
Probably my favorite one would be Forgotten Temple in Breath of the Wild.
That's a great one.
Which wasn't my idea. A lot of people were talking about it online, but there seems to be the ruins of the sealed temple in the Forgotten Temple. What's that about? So I was like, what is that about? Let's, have a look. And I think Tears of the Kingdom maybe muddied the waters on that theory, a little bit.
Yeah, just a bit.
As with maybe one or two other things. But that was just a really cool thing where it's like, people are discussing this online, let's dig into it. I think it's probably the best example of the way Breath of the Wild's world is built and kind of has callbacks to previous Zelda games that make you question but never quite gives you an explicit answer. So the Forgotten Temple theory, for those that haven't watched it, is that the Forgotten Temple is kind of the ruins of Skyward Sword's sealed temple or Temple of Hylia, just thousands of years in the future. But even in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom completely aside, there are little things that don't make sense about the theory. So like Hyrule Historia says that the Temple of Time was built over those ruins or whatever. So it doesn't quite work, but it's the way with any Zelda theory. A lot of it is, as long as the theory is narratively satisfying in itself, it doesn't really matter if like there's some quote that maybe disproves this or whatever, because Zelda lore is not, it's not like set in stone. It's so fluid and it changes all the time. And, it's more about creating things that are just satisfying to like think about rather than like concrete lore.
Some of our favourite theories have been, if you actually break it down to its fundamentals, have been just about some of the most mundane topics and smallest aspects of the games. Whether I remember a particularly like in the King's Grave, or Makar Island.
I was about to say
or,
Makar Island, yeah.
Yeah, just little things that are incredibly inconsequential.
What is it?
What is that island?
Mr. Zeltik, you should know this.
There's no answer.
But like you mentioned, as long as the actual narrative is satisfying, and as long as you get an opportunity to display how acrobatic you can be with your knowledge of Zelda, that's when, a theory really comes together, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
On the more personal side, before we get into the deep actual Zelda lore and recent events sort of stuff, because I'm sure that'll be quite the discussion. There was one small personal question that I had left, and it was just, what sort of other hobbies do you have outside of Zelda? Because obviously it's a massive part of your life, as it is for all of us, both in terms of making content, a job, just personal enjoyment. What are some other things you sort of enjoy away from all of this?
Well, I mean, outside of Zelda, there's gaming, in general. I'll hyperfixate on something, then move on to the next thing. It seems to be the way I do everything. So it's like, recently there's, Elden Ring, Valheim, games like that. Like, old school RuneScapes, this kind of like constant grind throughout my life that I've been playing. But outside of gaming, one negative about like... I suppose doing this, which not sound spoiled because there are so many positives, but like,
of course,
it kind of changes how you look at most creative things. It's like, so I used to a lot before doing YouTube, but I used to just kind of draw for drawing's sake or write for writing's sake. But now it's like, whenever I do that, I get this nagging feeling of like, I'm kind of wasting time here because I could be doing something still creative but more Zelda focused, and it would, benefit my channel. So I do less, I don't know, my hobbies have kind of, I still try and make time for them, but they've definitely fallen a little bit by the wayside. Outside of gaming and, watching TV and walking the dog and things like that. Sure. Like things everyone does.
Oh, you sound like a cave boy. You sound like someone who never leaves the house.
But I think that is something that a lot of people who maybe don't create YouTube videos, in particular Zelda theories, is once you actually really embrace the art of doing that, you do. You give up your ability to solely enjoy it for what it is, and you then become a vessel of communicating that to an audience. You can't just sit there and lose yourself to something, because you always have to be switched on. I need to be thinking about what I can work on next. How can I sculpt this into a video? You do trade in your ability to lose yourself to something, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely that element to it. I wanted to ask you actually, all three of you, it was quite interesting thinking about one video that kind of stood out of my own, like above the rest. I wanted to ask you all what video you've made that kind of stands out above the others.
That's an interesting question.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, because there's so many different ways I'd look at that.
Well, I'll tell you what, while you boys are thinking, one thing, and I sort of, I used that formula that you said you use yourself, Zeltik, which is, you take something that you like from the real world and you find a way of channeling that through Zelda. Like most guys, planes, trains, and automobiles. I love vehicles.
Yes, I've seen your transport video. Yeah.
Oh, you've actually watched that?
Yeah. On Zinc. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I don't watch that Zinc guy anymore. He's overrated.
The cave boys are awesome.
He's fallen off, yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't made a video in about 2 years either, which is not brilliant. But yeah, and I thought, right, how can I talk about Zelda and vehicles? And yeah, I married the two together, and I ended up making a video I actually really quite liked.
Fair enough, yeah.
Well, while Adam is still going through his...
I was going to say, I've absolutely got an answer. I've absolutely got the answer.
Go on.
Now that I've thought about it in a sense of not necessarily how well it performed, just my pure enjoyment out of making it, it's got to be... Well, it's a sort of not official series, but just a series of videos I did called Exploring Hyrule's Ghost Towns.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, I remember.
Those videos were incredibly satisfying to make, incredibly satisfying to research for. And they took such a weird place of inspiration that I don't think any other video has. So the whole style of those videos was basically like you're watching like a documentary. Those documentaries you get on TV where it's like exploring abandoned towns and random countries and stuff. Growing up, my dad used to love watching those on TV. So naturally, I was always in the room watching them with him. And I've always been obsessed with these sort of just ghost towns, abandoned places, just chilling, haunting areas. And because Breath of the Wild specifically is a sort of post-apocalyptic world, it's filled with that. Even if it's just small little ruins, and I'm sure we all know the fascination with environmental details in Zelda.
Oh, gotcha.
That sort of drew to me. So yeah, I think making videos about the quote-unquote ghost towns of Hyrule is definitely something that gave me great satisfaction as a creator. I really loved making these videos, and I really hope I can make more of them whenever the next big mainline Zelda comes out, because I just love stuff like that.
That is awesome.
I completely forgot about that period of YouTube where, like, the likes of, like, Joe Weller. There was, like, a ghost hunting era on YouTube at one point.
I enjoy those as well. I definitely
yes, I forgot that you also were a part of that, Adam.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
Well, personally, I'd say that I have never been that confident when it comes to actually making a theory. I really like the lore, and I've definitely never properly mastered everything that you need to know. Stuff like that. But I would say that my favourite video on my channel, on the solo channel at least, is my video on the Construct Origins.
Yeah, that was great.
It was just after the Tears of the Kingdom gameplay thing, like the 15-minute thing. Obviously, they showed off the Zonai charges, and just little tiny bits melded together to kind of like suggest that the Leneru mining robots were the same as the constructs, but just heavily tinkered with way down the timeline.
I seem to remember you hiring 2 very proficient voice actors to assist you with that video as well.
Oh, they were great voice actors. One of them did a really good buzz.
A buzz.
There you go, just like that.
I still remember.
There may be one piece of evidence that is fairly damning that the Zonai or someone was taking these bots, though.
My friend was kidnapped the other day. Sorry.
How did I know that I shouldn't have trusted Zinc with this task?
That was a hell of a video, Ed. It was. And that's what makes it such a shame that you never really dived into it more. Upload more, Ed.
Oh yeah, other Ed as well.
Agreed.
We have many Eds in the chat at the moment. I think we have some more topical points to touch upon. Eddie, if you would be so kind.
Of course. Well, what were your thoughts on the Direct? Doesn't have to be comprehensive, just a little good, bad Switch 2 Direct.
We've had 2 Directs in the last 2 weeks. What were your thoughts?
Oh, that's true. I forgot about those.
Yeah, I mean, Switch 2 Direct was pretty crazy. I thought it was fantastic. I was really happy with a lot of what they shown, which I don't know whether it makes me sound like not uneducated, but I don't know. I don't play a huge wide variety of games, so like a lot of Nintendo Directs, for like 95% of them, I'm kind of like, I'm happy for whoever this game's for, but it's not for me. You know, Shin Megami Tensei or whatever. It's like, okay.
That is the realest opinion I've heard for a while. Yeah. I think a lot of people fear the wrath of the Nintendo fan.
Yeah.
And are scared to sort of say, I'm just not too interested in this. Because, I too find myself most of the time thinking, yeah, exactly. I'm happy for whoever this is for, but this is not for me.
That's exactly where I find myself most of the time. But the Switch 2 Direct, a lot of that actually did interest me. You know, like obviously the big stuff, Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, looks amazing. New Hyrule Warriors, which I'm really excited about that. I know, Johnny. I know you're on my team for this, but Hyrule Warriors, especially Age of Calamity. When it comes to actually playing it, I'm not a fan of button mashing. It is just not my kind of game. I'm really happy that we're getting Age of Imprisonment, just because it's going to be another look at Tears of the Kingdom's lore. And I don't know. Again, it might just be hopium, but maybe it'll help patch up some of the areas where maybe the mysteries were too mysterious in that game. You know,
the depths, man.
The depths, exactly. So I don't know. I assume you guys are all the same, like excited to see at least maybe Johnny. I don't know. Yes, no.
Yeah, no. I definitely stayed and watched, so I definitely know what happened. But no, I think my general takeaway is it's somewhat similar to yours actually. It's that. More like it will give them a bit of a chance to positively retcon a bit of Tears of the King. Maybe tie up a few ends, clean up a few of the rough edges. We'll have to see them. We will have to see.
That's definitely what I'm most excited about. Obviously, the Wind Waker's kind of a weird one. It's a bit of a monkey's paw situation. It's like we've got the Wind Waker on Switch 2, but it's the original one. So you don't Swift Sail. It kind of makes me think that now they've done that. it makes me think whether the HD versions are actually dead, whether they're kind of weird
it's just
games,
been shelved,
and we're going to get maybe another 10, 15 years down the line we'll get a new
Twilight
remake
Princess.
of them. Or yeah, true. I don't know. Yeah, I know, Adam. You're the Twilight Princess guy. I know. How are you feeling? Do you think
Every day's a struggle.
We'll get it on GameCube?
Every day's a struggle.
Every day's a struggle. I'm hoping it's coming eventually.
Yeah. Would you be happy with the GameCube version appearing on Switch?
I mean, honestly, yeah, because for both Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, I kind of prefer the original versions just visually. More so with Wind Waker. I think Wind Waker HD is a little too, not necessarily vibrant, but just there's a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be pretty happy with it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, because I think that's way more likely now than Twilight Princess HD. I think.
Yeah, it feels like they've killed the HD port idea now.
I think they did, yeah. But, it is what it is. We still got it on the Switch, the Wind Waker at least. But,
yeah, we've got something.
Yeah, maybe we've got something, can't complain.
Now, if I could ask you a slightly more metaphysical question, Zeltik, that would be, when you started your channel, like I mentioned earlier, it was during what was a dark period in Nintendo's history. At the moment, we're seeing a bit of I wouldn't say a dark period for Zelda and the Zelda fandom, but definitely one that seems a little more... there's not quite as much electricity in the culture right now that there was, this time 5-10 years ago. Do you see this as a turning point? Do you think that, like, in the same way that back when you started your channel, right now we're seeing the start of a bit of a renaissance period for Zelda? Does the future look bright?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Zelda is kind of, it's eternal. It's never gonna go away or whatever. While Nintendo's making games, Zelda's always going to be their premium. It's always going to be, this is the best of what we can do. It's the new Zelda game. That's always going to be the case. So like, I'm never worried about the future of Zelda long term or whatever. But yeah, you're right. It comes in peaks and troughs. Like interest in Zelda, like energy, like you said, in the Zelda fandom, definitely. And I think we're in a weird position now where it's kind of like, for many people, I assume you're all the same as me, that like it feels particularly jarring because where I thought the Zelda fan base would be and where it currently is so different. Whereas like we thought off Tears of the Kingdom, it'd be a new high, it'd be crazy and then I think for a lot of people, Tears of the Kingdom, for some people, it is the game they wanted it to be. For others, maybe not so much. I think that is kind of the predominant opinion for most Zelda fans is whether you liked it or not, it's not kind of the next Breath of the Wild jump, like the next huge series-defining thing, which it could have been maybe if it was like Breath of the Wild with some more traditional Zelda elements. But I'm not going to get into that. But I think we're definitely in a little bit of a dip, definitely post Tears of the Kingdom. But, it really depends because we're in such a weird position now where we know somewhere in Japan, in a big white building, there's this team working on the next Zelda game. And it's not set in this Hyrule that we've spent so long, talking about to death. It's something new and it will be... I don't know. You can speculate, but you can't say anything for sure. It'll be crazy, but we just don't know anything about it. Which is this? It feels like kind of the bomb of excitement's there, but the fuse hasn't been lit yet. We just need 10 seconds of Link with the Master Sword standing in a field or something like that, and it'll be go time. It's a really weird position to be in, but I think I'd probably say we're kind of past the deepest point.
Oh god,
the post Tears of the
definitely.
Kingdom. Despair's probably a bit,
despair.
a bit of an exaggeration, but maybe post Tears of the Kingdom blues. We'll go with that. I think we're definitely climbing our way out of that now.
Would you agree with the sentiment that because it's my opinion that I think that Zelda's got almost a little too big. It almost got like Breath of the Wild. It got a little bit too big too quickly. And now Nintendo are almost at a point where they're a little too scared to fail. And the problem with that is, the problem with having such a massive product is that you then have such massive expectations to meet. And with those expectations come a lack of willingness to take risks. So it's my opinion that the Zelda team should be more willing to embrace the unusual and the weird and the more experimental. That's something we need in the franchise a little more than just your sort of, homologated sanitized Zelda products. We need the next Wind Waker. We need something that's going to rock the boat a little bit, I think.
Good joke.
Or do you think that maybe this is the right trajectory for it?
I completely agree with you that, you obviously had Breath of the Wild, which was, breaking the series conventions. That was its big thing. And that was this kind of new start for the series in so many ways. And they really weren't scared then to throw out the old and kind of come up with a new. But then I think you're right in that Breath of the Wild had success at a level that even maybe Nintendo weren't expecting. Like in, their top projected stats or whatever, it blew through all of those.
Even higher than 3D Mario.
Exactly, which is crazy. Which I don't know. Is that the first time?
I think it's the first time.
I think so.
3D Mario at least.
Bonkers, considering they came out in the same year as well, 2017. It's not like Zelda had a few more years to. Obviously, it came out with the system, but still, like the numbers are absolutely insane for that. Yeah. But then I think you're right, Johnny, in that like Tears of the Kingdom definitely felt like. They were kind of paralyzed by Breath of the Wild's success in that, like, they'd thrown out all these old conventions, but then Tears of the Kingdom felt like it had fallen into the new conventions, like the shrines and the memory system, which it doesn't have to. You don't have to have your story told through memories in an open world game. Yeah. You don't have to have dungeons broken up into shrines across the world. It kind of feels like, oh, well, Breath of the Wild did that, and that sold a bazillion copies. Let's do that again. So I think, we definitely need. We can't have Breath of the Wild 3. I think even if, it's set in a new world or whatever, I think we definitely need more to change than just, here's the same formula somewhere else. I don't think that'll fly.
It is interesting because I feel like the new formula has actually gotten way older than the old formula did by the time that it was thrown out.
That's not a bad point, actually, yeah.
Yeah, it's aged very quick.
I agree. Like, if you look at, like, the structures of, like, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, they're obviously kind of just Ocarina of Time's formula with a few things changed or whatever, but no one cared because it was so good.
And they're so different. They look different.
Yeah, they look different, which helps.
It was a lot more adaptable to the change, whereas this new formula is not so adaptable to that, so it ages a lot quicker.
Exactly, and I think that issue is like made more apparent because it was the same world, whereas obviously Breath of the Wild, the whole point in the game is go explore, and especially for like Zelda diehards like us, it's like a huge chunk of that world is stuff we've already explored, even though there are, there's caves, there's new side quests, whatever. But like overall, it feels very, very similar. Which Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, they did mix it up in that regard. But I think even without that, even if it was open world Termina or whatever, if it was still the same formula, I think you're right in that it would already start to be starting to feel stale as opposed to the old one.
I'm looking forward to the day that the Zelda team really shock me. And I'm like, wait, this is where we're going?
What are your opinions on if they go full sci-fi? Obviously, we've had, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom both have sci-fi elements. Would you hate
the thing
that?
is, this precedent has, this is a almost 30-year-old precedent now where obviously we saw the enormous transformation from Final Fantasy VI to Final Fantasy VII. It went from fantasy setting to, this sort of futuristic technological. In the short term, that did very well. I mean, it could be argued whether Final Fantasy managed to maintain its momentum. I mean, there's plenty of other things, like obviously the acquisition of Square and stuff like that. But I would like to think that they stay slightly more traditional with Zelda, and if they do try, and if they do go technological, they go down sort of like the Twilight Princess path, where it's related more to magic than it is technology. If they go full Final Fantasy VII, it might be, I don't know, that might be a little
bit of whiplash.
Thing is though, I'd sooner welcome that kind of change than remain, like you said, Zeltik, than go back to Breath of the Wild 3.
So I think I agree in that, like, I think it'd be cool in like how much it would shake everything up, but I don't know whether I'm just like basic in my tastes, but like I just like a guy on a horse with a sword and a shield and like...
I feel that.
Couldn't agree more.
I think if they're going to change anything drastically, I think the thing that would make the biggest difference without shaking everything up is the art style. And that's something that I'm always thinking about. I'm really, really hoping they don't make another sort of Breath of the Wild style and just change the tone on top of it. I really hope they actually change the style, which they're well known for. They're very well known for changing the style and embracing that. So that's something that I think will be really important with the next game as well.
If anything, it'd be more of a surprise if they didn't. Because obviously Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, in the same way that Ocarina of Majora is the same art style. But then every other 3D Zelda game has had like a wildly different approach. And in that I can't see them sticking. Even though I do really like this art style, I think it is a kind of perfect blend in so many ways of Wind Waker's Cell Shade, Twilight Princess.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. It is just so perfect.
It is, but I agree with you, Adam, in that they need to just do something completely crazy. I don't know whether they should go. I don't know what direction I'd like them to go. To be fair, I don't. Maybe not super realistic. I'd like to see a more modern take on kind of Twilight Princess's.
Yeah.
Well, like, the characters are still exaggerated in their features or whatever. They don't look like real people.
Yeah.
But then, the lighting and the textures are a lot more gritty, which with Switch 2, power behind it, could look amazing.
With the success of games like the Soulsborne games,
Yeah.
you would think that people are clearly open to a gothic, dark. They're clearly very welcoming to this style. Elden Ring, one of the biggest video games in modern times, within the last few years. And I think that sets a great precedent for Nintendo. I mean, surely Nintendo have paid attention to that, and it maybe go even darker than Twilight Princess. That'd be a great way to go.
I'd love that.
Yeah. Coming down to the thing that's coming up most recent. What the fuck am I saying? The thing to be most excited for coming up is Zelda knows it's going to be used for a load of gameplay stuff for the Switch 2 versions of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It's going to be used in, you can see some play data for the games. There's the voice memories, which I've already mentioned. There's some other stuff that's honestly not as crazy, but it's still cool for changing up someone's gameplay. But voice memories, they're basically just fully voiced brand new memories from what we've seen so far that they randomly decided to not include in the Switch 2 Direct, but then they had it in the trailer that came out after the Direct. With that in mind, voice memories, do we think that they're actually going to do anything? Do we think that they're going to help Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild's lore, or no?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like, I'm obviously optimistic about it. The ones we've seen so far really didn't give a whole lot. I don't know. There's she goes, when Link goes into Zelda's study or bedroom, one of them study, I think, there's like a silent princess, and the memory says, oh, it's a silent princess. That's it. That's all she says. Oh, I thought they were extinct. And it's like, great, that's nothing new. It's cool to, have a little bit more, but it's nothing kind of that we didn't already know. Same with, there was one in the Temple of Time as well. It was just kind of, this is the Temple of Time. Not much to it. But there are so many of them, right? There's like 150 in each game.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Just by virtue of how many there are, surely we've got to get something interesting. 300 voice memories with no new information. That's got to be unlikely, right?
Going off some of the ones we have seen, it does appear as though it could be an idiot's guide to Breath of the Wild.
Definitely with the GPS. I think that's so corny. They're
oh yeah.
It's not even like a Eddie voice actor or whatever. No, it's like a proper like Apple Maps voice.
Turn left now.
So maybe you're right. Maybe it is just kind of very surface level stuff.
Yeah.
I hope not. I hope we get some new information. I don't know, because we've got it's not just Zelda. There's also Raru has some lines we know
Master
in Tears of the
Koga.
Kingdom. Koga too. Yeah. So I assume with Breath of the Wild, right? It's just Zelda, and then Tears of the Kingdom has one character for each layer.
Maybe, yeah, that would make sense. I think it's interesting though because they didn't have to go back and do the voice memories. I've always thought, since it's been revealed, I've thought it's quite interesting that they decided to go back, because obviously a lot of people, it's quite common knowledge to be fair, that Zelda's lore is quite an afterthought most of the time. Mm-hmm. Maybe not all the time, but most of the time. I think it's interesting that they're, maybe anyway, don't want to get my hopes up, going back and trying to, it's not an afterthought anymore. It's something they're actively trying to do.
This is like a much afterthought.
Yes, a much afterthought.
I know, I kind of agree that maybe they're going back and filling in the cracks a little bit. That's my dream anyway, but we'll see.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
Too long.
Realistically, Zelda's literally just going to be going, oh yeah, this is an excerpt from my diary. Yes, it's in this room.
Yeah, exactly.
Once again, reminding you, Zeltik, that from the beginning of his channel, which was about 10 years ago now,
yes,
up until just the other day, we've covered pretty much everything Zelda, but there is just one last question for you, Zeltik, if you wouldn't mind. That is, what is your hottest Zelda take, would you say?
This one perhaps used to be hot a couple of years ago. Now I don't think it is so much, in that I think Breath of the Wild is a better game than Tears of the Kingdom. You can perhaps prefer some things about Breath of the Wild, but Tears of the Kingdom is objectively better because it's Breath of the Wild with more content. But I don't think a game can be objectively better than another game, and B, just because there's more things, I think in so many ways that's what makes it worse, in that Breath of the Wild, you're on the ground. Obviously, you're on the paraglider as well, but you're so much more grounded, so much more immersed in Hyrule. Whereas Tears of the Kingdom, a huge point in the game is building things to skip the exploration stage of traveling around Hyrule. I think just by the virtue of how much more grounded you are in Breath of the Wild, how much more immersive the world is, basically just on vibes, I think Breath of the Wild is, in my opinion, a better game.
There's definitely more honor that comes with Breath of the Wild, in the sense that it's much harder to break ground than it is to innovate on ground that's already broken with, 6-7 years of hindsight on top of that.
Yeah.
It's, Breath of the Wild laid the foundations. Tears of the Kingdom was stood up on its shoulders. It's very... I think it's very naive to overlook what it is that Breath of the Wild did by awarding Tears of the Kingdom this big medal for what it is, when most of its DNA comes from Breath of the Wild.
Exactly, and it's like, just because they've added new things, which, are fun most of the time, it doesn't make the overall experience better. Like, if you... not going to compare Breath of the Wild to the Mona Lisa, but if you had the Mona Lisa, and then you had a copy of the Mona Lisa where, they've given her cyborg arms and stuff like that, like, it doesn't make that better. That would be better, but like, you know what I mean?
Be awesome.
It's
The original thought is more impressive than the innovation.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm coming from. That obviously that's personal opinion. A load of people disagree, but whatever.
A lot of people certainly do, but I equate it to it's the difference between Breath of the Wild is showing you working out, and Tears of the Kingdom is just writing the answer down. There's more. There's more honor that comes with starting something rather than innovating upon it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, you can't make me put myself in the firing line without joining me. Go on, all of you. Controversial Zelda takes. Come on.
I tell you what, I will start with the take that has got me torched by many members of the Zelda fandom multiple times.
Here we go.
And the thing is, what I said back in the day, I still stand by it. It's 100% true, and most of the Zelda... To be fair as well, it's Zelda Tube that doesn't like this. Like, the actual Zelda creators that don't like this, not the Zelda fans. And that is that one of Zelda Tube's biggest problems is its social anxiety. Because most of the Zelda creators are socially anxious people, they don't show their faces. Lots of people don't show their actual personalities and faces on their camera, and that's why Zelda Tube is so devoid of so many connections that it could have. It suffered because, so essentially, socially awkward people make a socially awkward community, and that's what Zelda Tube is. That's what a lot of the Zelda Tubers don't want to admit, or don't want to but that is the truth. The reality behind why you don't see many Zelda creators getting, for example, sponsorships, is because one of the first rules in marketing is that they want a face, because people connect to people. And that, and I'm not saying we just need to monetize Zelda, but I'm saying that it's a great example of why having a face, having a personality, having that connection is so important. It's because people connect to it, and that is something that's been devoid. And like I say, the first time I brought that up, Zelda Tube, the Zelda Discord lit up, and I was lynched immediately.
Oh, really?
But it's the truth. Like I say, I stand by it 100%. I believe it's the truth.
No, fair enough. Yeah.
I reckon I'll follow that one up. Don't worry, mate. Don't worry, Adam, mate. I've got this.
Leave me till last. Leave me till last. Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, mate. I've got this. It's easy. I quite like Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay. That's so controversial.
Fair enough.
That is a great way of following it up.
Thank you. But to be fair, I genuinely feel like that is actually my most crazy take. I don't like... I feel like, especially after release, I loved Tears of the Kingdom, as a lot of people I think did right after release. And I feel like my general opinion has gone down quite a bit. I I do still love it, I'd say. I do still love the game, but I see the problems. Like I'm not deaf to all of its problems. Thinking about anything else, I feel like I'm a very bog standard Andy. My opinions are just kind of not that hot most of the time.
I love that we've got to a point in the Zelda fandom where liking the most recent game is a hot take. And that's actually the truth.
That's the Zelda cycle. Get him out of here. I'm out.
Adam, you Scottish bastard, tell us, what is your hottest Zelda take?
To be honest, I think this hot take is I mainly come under fire for this from one particular set of fans, and it's the Ocarina of Time fans, specifically.
Oh no.
I've said this before, and I
going.
always get a very divided comment section, and this is a very Twilight Princess fan take, I must warn you. I am of the belief that Twilight Princess is a far better version of Ocarina of Time. And I say that because of the similarities between how both of those games are structured. Because, I mean, like, structurally, yeah, Twilight Princess is very much like Ocarina of Time in the sense of how you go about the dungeons, how the story's laid out, even just how Link looks in that game. It is very Ocarina of Time vibes, just in a whole other setting. And yeah, you know, being a Twilight Princess mega fan, I can't deny it. I definitely enjoy it more than Ocarina of Time, and I played Ocarina of Time first. And when I played Twilight Princess, I couldn't help but think, you know, this is just as much fun as Ocarina of Time, but better. And that, I mean, that's for me personally. And yeah, that's my hot take that I come under fire for every now and then.
To be fair, I think, Adam, I'm basically on your side with that. Maybe not quite as high with the opinion of Twilight Princess.
Well, it's not to say Ocarina of Time's bad. It is a great game.
No, of course not.
No, not at all. But is that not fundamentally the same argument as Tears of the Kingdom is better than Breath of the Wild?
I was thinking that initially.
Yeah, in some ways.
Please do write down in the comments what you think, and we can promptly ignore everything that you all say.
Of course.
Because we're, of course, all right in all of our opinions.
Obviously.
No, not at all. But yeah, I think that just about does it. Ed, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. You like, you know, people like yourself really don't need to come on to shows like this, but we really do appreciate it. And above all else, I want to tell you, as someone who's watched you for a number of years, I really appreciate what you've done for Zelda and the community. I really appreciate the amount of attention you've brought to it, the level of care and time you've put into it. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, well, I really appreciate that, and thank you all so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you guys, and so yeah, I've been like a lurker, the Cave Boys, for a little while, just seeing what you boys have been up to. It's been great to, like, you know, actually talk to you, and yeah, no, real pleasure to be on. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we'd be more than happy to have you back sometime soon.
Obviously,
for sure. No, I'd love to. Right,
Eddie, wrap us up, because my camera's just died.
Oh yeah, no, mate, my camera died halfway through and I had to reset everything. Good luck with the editing, Johnny. Right. That has been the Cave Boys plus Zeltik, the other Ed, the better Ed. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Check out Zeltik. Check out Zeltik. You better. You already
definitely needs the promo.
You already know him,
go on.
But go.
I'm waving at the camera. My camera's not even on.
Bye-bye. I'll do the waving for you.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.